when I try not to drive on it.
Oh yeah.
Background here, I have played a little bit of Fortnite over my time. More of a researching person on this game, more than anything else. There we go. Right, so a new Formula 1 season is upon us. And I was fairly confident about those predictions. I was. But then... pre-season qualifying has taken place. Does it make a difference? A little bit. For one, we definitely know that it was Honda's previous engines that were making the McLaren so unreliable, the McLaren far more reliable, a loose wheel nuts being the only issue they had compared to having to change 9 engines in their first, they're testing in Barcelona and they missed Silverstone. So they've done a lot better this time, have McLaren, and that's something I'm going to factor into my top 10. Also, didn't realize how quick the Renaults would be. Didn't realize how somewhat average the Mercedes were. I mean, you could argue that Valtteri Bottas was the only one, really hammering the car at the time. But Hamilton didn't do much. Excuse me a minute. Sorry. I'm trying to cough as little down the mic as possible. I'm not too well. There we go. Right. Don't know if I can change my top 10, but there is one I'm seriously considering. 2 I'm seriously considering removing from the top 10. And those 2 are Ocon and Perez. I'm thinking about knocking out... Oh, login? Oh, there's maintenance on Fortnite. I had no idea. Well, that's going to make my video less interesting visually. Yeah, either way, I had Perez and Ocon in 9th and 8th for my predictions because the Force Indias are always fairly consistent. Now, this could bite me in the ass if I remove both of them from that statistic. Because it is very likely that one of them is going to be in the top 10 this year, probably Ocon. I still think Ocon is a better driver. Perez caused most of the incidents between them because Ocon and Perez had a bit of a rocky relationship, at Force India with banging into each other and stuff. It does happen, it happened with Vettel and Raikkonen, it happened with Ricciardo and Verstappen, but it happened more often with them, and it was usually ended quickly with the bigger teams, but Ocon and Perez, it just kept happening again and again, and that's a problem. And they were blaming each other. But when you watch it, it's mainly Checo, it's mainly Perez. Yeah, so I'm gonna say Perez been in my top 10 because you see I'm all about predictions. Even though I never made videos, I still make predictions every year just for my own personal amusement. And Perez has always been in the top 10 because when I first started getting into Formula 1 properly again, Perez was with McLaren at the time, so he was putting in average performances anyway, high up in the top 10. And then when he went to Force India and it turned out they had an okay car, well, it worked fine for them. Something's not happening with Fortnite, so the title of this video is going to be very misleading if I have to switch it to something else. Okay, so we're going to go through my top 10, and I'm going to make a lot of positional changes, and 2 people are going to be left out of the top 10, which I think is going to be very unfortunate, but I think that's just the way it's going to go this year after witnessing what happened. So goodbye Perez. And for a while before I was away to make this video, I asked myself, would I put Carlos Sainz in the top 10? And you know, I've weighed up Carlos Sainz or Ocon, and I'm going for Ocon. But I'm going for an order which you may not be expecting. So, after watching the cars drive, number 10, my prediction is Ocon. I originally had him as 8th. The main reason I had the Force Indias there and I had Hulkenberg 10th is because I really didn't know how good the Renaults were going to be, because Renaults, you could say, yeah, they're going to be running the same engine as McLaren and Red Bull this year, which could be a good thing, but do they have a good enough car for it? And so far, their times have been, you know, within a second of the front runners, which definitely makes them a top 10 competitor without a doubt. And you know, occasionally, as Force India have been, they could be a podium stealer. So I see Renault maybe stealing Force India's spotlight as the sort of dark horse of Formula 1 races. So I'm going to put him there. I'm going to put Ocon in 10th. And I'm sorry, Carlos Sainz from Renault, and I'm sorry, Perez from Force India, but you are not going to make it into my top 10. Number 9, I'm going to put my number 10 choice, which was dun 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 Hulkenberg. Because we've seen the Renaults now, and I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. It's hard to make me that impressed. It is. The car was simply better. The Renault is definitely a much better car this year. But a lot of the other cars, as I said in the last video, it is very likely that most of the other cars will obviously get better as well. That's exactly what I witnessed in the pre-season. I'm sorry, I'm a bit all over the place. In the pre-season testing in Barcelona, we definitely seen improvements by everyone's lofty standards. This is when it gets interesting. This is when it starts to get very interesting. I'm going to make a very bold call from now on. Everything that happens is now a bold call. But I am still pretty confident about it. Okay? Right, so I want you to ignore everything I've been saying, because I've been busy writing, multitasking, and smoking. Okay, so that last minute gobbledygook, reverse reboot. Okay, so we had 10th at Ocon, we had 9th at Hulkenberg, so we're going with number 8, and that is going to be Stoffel van Dorn, which I'm pretty sure is when I started talking about nonsense. I thought Van Dorn was an average driver. I did. I thought last year he came to prove a point, and he didn't. He had the same car as Alonso, and Alonso completely outdrove him, and Van Dorn finished with very little points. However, so far, because the McLaren has this better engine, it's running faster times, he's going to have a very dominant teammate when it comes to being in the top 10. We're going to have to put Van Dorn in there, because he has got a car just as good as Alonso's, and at the end of the day, you know, this kid did win a lot of stuff before he came to Formula 1. He has got the winning potential, he has got the desire and the heart, he's got everything he needs to be a good Formula 1 driver, and if he's given the car, then he can get the points. So that's why I'm going to put Van Dorn 8th, even though he wasn't in my original top 10, because I was worried about maybe the inconsistencies of McLaren. But having said that, I am still putting Fernando Alonso 7th. I'm sorry, this isn't the year Fernando Alonso is going to win his miraculous third year. I reckon it could be next year, because I think Hamilton is still going to be ferocious. Well, I think Hamilton and the other 5 drivers that I've yet to say are still going to be a bit too much for Fernando Alonso in what is still considered a struggling McLaren. You know, getting 5th and 6th fastest times still isn't where McLaren want to be, but it is a huge plus. But Alonso 7th, consistent on the points, but the car's not as fast as the rest of the drivers we're about to list. Right, we witnessed the pace of the Ferraris and the Red Bulls both being the fastest cars so far, both beating the Mercedes by, you know, not exactly thousandths, but I'm talking more tens. Sometimes, in some cases, 3/10, and I'm pretty sure in Ricciardo's case, I think it might have been 5 or something. But even though, considering all of that, I think we've now got to start to factor in age, compatibility, drivability, okay? We're now... This is when it becomes down to the drivers, because I think there's very little in the top 3 cars this year, apart from the drivers. The drivers is definitely the biggest difference. So, again, still pains me, I'm going to keep you down in 6th, Mr. Kimi Räikkönen. He just doesn't have the fire anymore. I mean, he's got the consistency, he's good with the car, but Kimi Räikkönen is not the Kimi Räikkönen that won the World Championship, not the Kimi Räikkönen who made his way to Ferrari the first time. And I think we started to see the stage that Alonso is at right now with his ability was the stage Räikkönen, I feel, was at Lotus. You know, he was still brilliant, but it's coming to a close. And that pains me because, as I say, Kimi Räikkönen is my favourite driver in the roster, and it will be Max Verstappen once he retires, which I have a horrible feeling could be at the end of this season. However, having said that, it makes me very hopeful Alonso might go back to Ferrari. So yes, Kimi Räikkönen 6th. I had you in 4th from my last prediction, but I'm going to put you 5th, Daniel Ricciardo. Well, I've got nothing negative to say about Daniel Ricciardo because he was the fastest guy on day 1. He's going to be in a competitive car, so why is he all the way down in 5th, you may ask? Well, let's just say after witnessing the performances of certain other drivers, I think they have boosted themselves in my mind as more likely title contenders than Daniel Ricciardo. So this is when it gets interesting. The top 4. Last time I had Ricciardo 4th, Verstappen 3rd, Vettel 2nd, and Hamilton 1st. So we're going to go for a wild one right off the bat. We're going to go 4th, Sebastian Vettel. I'm calling it, ladies and gentlemen. I think Sebastian Vettel is going to have a torrid time this year. Because we all know Vettel is Mr. Consistent in the car, but I'm afraid Mr. Consistent doesn't have the best car anymore. And if you give Mr. Consistent a competitive car, he's going to give you a competitive score, but he's not going to give you a world championship. And I'm sorry, that's the reality of Sebastian Vettel. Unless you give him a championship winning car, he doesn't win world championships. Lewis Hamilton had to fight his ass off for his first one with McLaren, you know, and we now start to see with the likes of Bottas's performance last season just how good a driver Nico Rosberg actually was. I mean, yeah, he was a whiny little sometimes. He kept beating Hamilton sometimes. He went toe-to-toe with Hamilton, and don't get me wrong, the only reason Rosberg is a world champion is because Hamilton's car kept breaking down that year, but we won't get into that. The bottom line is, Sebastian, I think you're a great driver, but you're not an aggressive driver. You showed a bit of aggression when you shunted Hamilton, but that was a bit more of an asshole move, to be honest, but everyone understands why. I mean, at the time I personally thought Lewis was brake testing you as well, was my initial reaction, but you know, like everyone else, kids now can just review the footage and make up their mind for themselves. That's why I did. Sorry, Seb. but I'm going to put you down in fourth because I see three drivers being a lot better this year. Third, I'm going to put Valtteri Bottas, who I originally had, if you remember, in fifth. I thought Bottas was average last year. Yeah, he won his first Grand Prix, but yeah, compared to what Rosberg was doing, it is so average from Bottas. But so far from pre-season, he is definitely the best driver out there. I mean, Ricciardo and Vettel set the fastest times, but who sat the second fastest in both sessions? It was Bottas. I think he's got a lot to work on his consistency, and with Vettel maybe slumping back the order, that definitely puts him in the top 3 position. I could bump him up into second, but this is when I want my wild prediction to be very true. I want Max Verstappen to finish second in the World Championship. I want everyone in the world to see this guy is a future world champion. You know, I will be astounded, you know, that in the next 15 years Max Verstappen doesn't win at least one world championship. Yeah, I mean, he's got to have at least a career that long left. You know, he's ages with me, he's only 20. He already has the fire. He already has the drivability. He has the aggression. He is one of the best overtakers on the field. He is ruthless when it comes to overtaking, and you know, I think that comes mainly down to the fact that he never had the more refined skills of the other Formula 1 drivers, the youth ones that were brought up, you know, through a very particular system, have driven one-seaters before. Then you had Max come in with only karting experience and not even a driver's license, and he's won a race more than all the other youngsters. In fact, I think he's won 2 races, is it? I can't remember, but you know, Max Verstappen, come on, you've got to give it to me. The kid is the future. He is just unbelievable behind the wheel. He was a bit cocky in his first year, but you can already see he's a nice guy. Having Daniel Ricciardo as a teammate, it's going to make him nice and grounded. He's going to be a good guy, but he is also a phenomenal driver, and I would love it if Verstappen would be the main competitor to Lewis Hamilton, because like I said, next year I see it being Hamilton now on the downward spiral. He's good, but he's no Alonso. I've always said that. No one's ever agreed with me, seeing as, you know, Hamilton has doubled the world championships. But for me, Alonso's even though Raikkonen's my favourite and Hamilton and Vettel have the more world titles, for me Alonso is the best gifted Formula 1 driver since the retirement of Michael Schumacher. I genuinely do. He's brilliant. With Renault, he was brilliant. In the early days, he was brilliant. With Ferrari, even though he was so close, he was brilliant. They were all brilliant. But I'm definitely going to have to put Max Verstappen second, which means, obviously, Lewis Hamilton in first. It's going to be Hamilton. It was always going to be Hamilton. He's got the better car. He is the current world champion, and he is Mr. Consistent now over Sebastian Vettel. He's in the position now Vettel was in with Red Bull when they were dominant, and it's just going to be hard to shake that off, because Red Bull lost their reign when there was a drastic engine change, you know, when they had to change the system a lot. And you know, that's not going to happen until 2021, says the FIA and Liberty. Liberty. So who knows if a team can still step it up, but if history has anything to tell us, Mercedes could be the Formula 1 world champions until 2021, and even then they might still be the best. So I think it's very hard to dethrone Lewis Hamilton, and as for the rest, definitely it works. So yeah, that is the final top 10 prediction after finally having watched the cars run on track. sad we only got 2 days because the third day was ruined by snow in Barcelona. But the top 10, I reckon: Sebastian Ocon, Nico Hulkenberg, Stoffel van Dorn, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, Daniel Ricciardo, Sebastian Vettel, Valtteri Bottas, Max Verstappen, and Lewis Hamilton, world champion again. So thank you very much. This will be the last video I upload today, most likely, and I'm sorry about the Fortnite maintenance. What can you do? Peace out.